From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington, the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, education's role in recidivism. Congress considers bringing back Pell Grants for prisoners, and my guest today to talk about that with us is Dr. Frederica Zaragoza. He's the president of the College of Southern Nevada, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marilee. My pleasure.
Thank you. Education is our primary hope for rehabilitating prisoners. Without education, I'm afraid most inmates would leave prison only to return to a life of crime. Those are the words of the late U.S. Senator Claiborne Pell. He's the namesake of the Pell Grant. It was financial aid for low-income students that years ago also was available to inmates. And today on Eye on Washington, we'll learn about this financial aid to lower-income students and why it ceased being offered to inmates a quarter century ago. We'll look at a new bill before Congress seeking to reinstate federal Pell Grant eligibility for those incarcerated in federal and state penal institutions, and why my guest says it's crucial for reducing Nevada's and this nation's recidivism rate. And we'll learn about Nevada's successful prison education program operating at its community colleges and how it hugely improves ex-felons' chances of gainful employment upon release. Well, let's start with some history. The Pell Grant began as the Higher Education Act of 1965, passed during the administration of President Lyndon Johnson. HEA provided financial aid to students from low-income families. Along with this, and also in 1965, prisoners won the right to apply for federal financial aid for education. And they remained eligible for those education grants until the 1994 passage of the Crime Bill, which prohibited prisoners from using Pell Grants for college courses. Nearly 20 years later, studies were showing that might have been a questionable move. The Rand Corporation, funded by the Department of Justice, found in 2013 that inmates who participated in correctional education programs were 43% less likely to end up behind bars. And just 2 years later, the Department of Education announced the Second Chance Pell Experimental Sites Initiative, which has led to a bill now before Congress considering whether to reinstate Pell Grant eligibility for prisoners. Now, Dr. Zaragoza, we're going to get into the legislation in our next segment, but I thought we should start off by telling our audience a little about Pell Grants, what they've meant in the past, both to low-income families and those behind bars and society as a whole.
Marilee, the Pell Grant is probably the pathway to higher education for many communities in America, and certainly true for community college students. 70% of our full-time in-college students are Pell Grant eligible. In addition to that, I mean, if you were to look at the numbers, there's about 7.5 million individuals that are recipients of Pell. So it is indeed the pathway to higher education, and these are low income. It's a needs-based kind of a grant, and it's a grant. It's like a scholarship. You don't have to pay it back. So for many, it is really that pathway to higher education.
It's a gift.
It really
leads to a brighter future, right? You know, the elimination of Pell Grants for prisoners really was contrary to the wishes of its namesake. Here's a quote from the late Senator Pell from 1994. He said, "Criminals should be sentenced and incarcerated, but let us also be concerned with their rehabilitation so that prison does not become a revolving door."
Absolutely. And I think history will prove us right when you look at the data. And I think the Rand study was very, very robust in terms of its finding that prisoners need to have those skill sets to be able to re-enter society. 95% of those are going to be coming back into society, and they need to have those skill sets.
The Pell Grant value now is almost $6,200. That's a big help toward getting a degree when you have no income and no assets, isn't it?
Absolutely, and that's the number one barrier for current inmates in terms of continuing any educational opportunities whatsoever. So Pell is indeed that pathway that many inmates need to be able to get those skill sets they need for re-entry into society.
It's helped so much for throughout the years to low-income students, and I think your argument, as we were discussing earlier, was it means the exact same for prisoners who have no income, no assets, and want an education so they have a better chance of success on the outside.
Absolutely, Marilee, especially in today's economy where 2/3 of the jobs require education beyond high school, and obviously where many, on the other side, where many of these jobs are going unfilled, and we have the ability really to equip our inmates with those skill sets they need to be able to get those jobs and be contributing members to society.
How big of a role do Pell Grants play at CSN?
70% of our full-time and college students are students, so it's the #1 driver for access into higher education for community colleges.
All right, thank you. And when we return, Congress takes a new look at an old prisoner benefit. We're going to have details on the bill to reinstate federal Pell Grant eligibility for prisoners right after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive and Body Shop, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
Many things in a mother's life affect her pregnancy. You can help improve the health of mothers and babies in Nevada by completing a Pregnancy Risk Assessment Monitoring System, or PRAMS, survey from the Nevada Division of Public and Behavioral Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The survey asks new moms about their experience before, during, and after pregnancy. Responses are confidential. If you receive a PRAMS survey, please share your story.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Hey! Okay.
If you love me enough to tolerate my perfect little pets and all their glorious dander, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington and our discussion of reinstating Pell Grants for prisoners. My guest today is Dr. Frederica Zaragoza, the president of the College of Southern Nevada. Well, ever since the 1994 crime bill banned Pell Grants for the incarcerated, advocates for this financial help for prisoners have been trying to bring them back. In 2015, the U.S. Department of Education announced the Second Chance Pell Grant Experimental Sites Initiative. That effort led 65 colleges to provide training and education at their local prisons and letting inmates apply for and use Pell Grants for that schooling. Those colleges serve about 12,000 prisoners annually. It's a small sample from the more than 1.5 million people currently serving time. Now Congress is looking at bringing back Pell Grants for prisoners nationwide. The Restoring Education and Learning Act of 2019 would reinstate federal Pell Grant eligibility for individuals incarcerated incarcerated in federal and state penal institutions. Advocates point to studies like that Rand Corporation one I mentioned earlier in our show, which found correctional education greatly improves the chance for success on the outside. Inmates who participate in education programs were 43% less likely to end up in prison, and it may up their chances of obtaining employment after release. In fact, those who participated in correctional education were 13% more likely to gain employment post-release than those who did not. Dr. Zaragoza, when you consider that 9 million people are released from prison annually, and at least 95% of the incarcerated are going to be let back into their communities at some point, what would it mean to the Nevada economy if prisoners were both better educated and not only getting jobs, but maybe those better paying Nevada jobs?
Better yet, those jobs that employers just can't find enough skilled workers to fill. We have many frustrated...
Right, it's a different time with technology and everything else, right?
Absolutely, and we have many employers that are very frustrated because they don't have qualified applicants. So across the country, there's a mismatch, and you also see employers, especially in areas like Nevada, that are going through a diversification process, who are finding kind of these areas where there's a lot of opportunities and just not a lot of individuals in the pool. So getting our inmates into the pathways of high demand, high skill occupations is truly important. And I'll give you some examples where I think individuals that have the skill sets and that have the certifications are getting great opportunities in the workplace. But certainly in places like Las Vegas, construction is huge, and we have very strong pre-apprenticeship programs. And so we're able to create opportunities directly, from the transition from the prison environment into the workplace through partnerships with our apprenticeship partners as well. But in addition to that, areas like cybersecurity, you see tremendous demand. And again, it's not always a bachelor's degree. It's certifications that open kind of that segue into those employment sectors. We see tremendous opportunities in manufacturing, for example. Again, where all it takes is being able to get our inmates with those skill sets that they're going to be needing to get those jobs. So the jobs are there. If we do the alignment and if we equip them with the right skill sets, they'll be successful.
And taking it slightly on a different path, think of the impact on local communities. Isn't it a safer place to live if ex-cons are working, making enough money, they're not tempted to commit more crime? You're kind of out of trouble, out of jail if you're gainfully employed as well, aren't you?
There's a partner that we have in the Las Vegas. It's the Hope for Prisoners program. And their whole focus is indoctrinating the inmates back into society. And their stories are amazing. They're not only re-indoctrinated back into society, they're contributing members of society. They're on the PTAs, they're part of the neighborhood watch. So they become very valuable assets to our country. And I think it's a combination of those transitions, those opportunities, and then the ability for them to re-indoctrinate and to be full members of society.
That's great. Reinstating Pell Grants for prisoners, it has bipartisan support, both in Congress as a whole and among the Nevada delegation. What are you sharing on this issue with Nevada's members and senators during your trip here to Washington?
It's very much our dialogue today. It's all about why the second Pell is important, especially in Nevada. We mirror all the demographics nationally. We mirror the same kind of obstacles that you've talked about through the Rand study. So we're sharing that with our congressional officers and elected officials. And I think we're all on the same page. This is something that makes sense for Nevadans. It's something that makes sense for the economy, and it's something that we support very strongly at the College of Southern Nevada, and I would say the Nevada system of higher education as well.
Okay, thanks. And when we return, Nevada's prison education program, how it has helped Nevada inmates transition back into society, and why my guest says the return of Pell Grants for prisoners would up its success rate. We're going to have details for you right after this.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC. Your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
There is no known safe amount of marijuana used during pregnancy. Everything a mother eats, drinks, or smokes affects her developing baby or enters her breast milk. Just like alcohol and tobacco, using marijuana can have negative effects on your baby. Using any form of marijuana may be harmful to your baby during pregnancy and while breastfeeding. Marijuana can affect your ability to care for your baby or someone else's baby. If you're pregnant or a new mother and using marijuana, you are urged to quit. Visit SoberMomsHealthyBabies.org or call 211.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
This is a storm drain. It collects stormwater. Grass clippings, fertilizer, yard waste, they all contaminate our stormwater. Litter, pet waste, they also contaminate it. Fluids from leaking vehicles run right in there. All stormwater goes untreated directly to our local waterways. Keep contaminants out of our storm drains and out of our waters. Join us in preserving Nevada's waters for future generations. Visit loveandbewaters.com.
We just finished dinner and it was time for homework. He hates homework. I know he's bright.
Why is it so hard for me?
He's just gotta
as
try a
hard
little
as
harder.
I can.
1 in 5 children struggle with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to understood.org.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of Congress's refocus on Pell Grants for prisoners. We've been visiting with Dr. Frederica Zaragoza, the president of the College of Southern Nevada. Before this show, my guest, Dr. Zaragoza, told me that Nevada's higher education system is committed to working with Nevada inmates to prepare them for successful reentry back into their local communities by providing higher education and training for jobs in the emerging Nevada economy. An experiment of sorts called the Prison Education Program was initiated in 2017 at the 3 Nevada public community colleges, the College of Southern Nevada, Western Nevada College, and Truckee Meadows Community College, whose aim was to help inmates transition back into society. These incarcerated students earn academic credit and workforce training as they finish their sentences. Nevada has operated a prison education program in the past, but it was disrupted by funding cuts that resulted from the Great Recession. In 2008-2009, state funding was cut for prison education at CSN and WNC. Funding and grant fundraising brought the programs back to WNC and TMCC, but it was a state-funded pilot prison education program at CSN in coordination with the Nevada Department of Corrections and Hope for Prisoners that showed officials the success of the program and led Governor Sisolak and the legislature to expand support to the program to all 3 schools last year. And Dr. Zaragoza, your office told me before this show that the success of this pilot program for Nevada inmates cannot be understated. It really goes beyond recidivism, doesn't it?
It does. In many ways, it kind of epitomizes the return on investment in that not only do you have very high success rates, for us it was 90% of the individuals that the inmates that took these pathways and courses succeeded. So they certainly had the academic potential. But then about 70% of those that came to us either transitioned into employment or to higher education. So it proves that given the opportunity, the inmates can certainly be contributing members of the higher education community and society.
You know, and I want to state it again, of course, it reduces your odds of committing crime if you're gainfully employed and employed in the type of job that brings a livable wage. You're not out there doing things to supplement your income, things that might land you back behind bars.
Yeah, and these are high-wage jobs, so I think that we're looking at family-sustaining jobs. In most cases, you're looking at in a $20 range type employment opportunities. So they require high skills, and many of those high skills are certifications and degrees. So our pathways lead both in terms of certifications, and these certifications would be, for example, for construction, OSHA certification. It could be Tugger. It's the trade skills that they need, but it's the certifications. They require high skill sets.
And it's a big help to the Nevada economy as well when taxpayers are not paying for as many prisoners. Plus, these people, as you said earlier in the show, these people are going from being a burden on society to a benefit to society. They're contributing to the economy and their community, as you said.
Absolutely. And if you go to Las Vegas or Nevada in general, you're going to see their work when you look at those construction, those buildings that are going up. And a good percent of the workforce is a reentry population.
Your office told me that just in the past 2 years, under this test program, dozens of students have completed the coursework at High Desert State Prison, Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center, and likewise that WNC and TMCC have seen impressive results and lots of graduates.
Exactly. Well, their success rate of about 90% is actually higher than the population in general. So they do very well once given the opportunity.
So tying the return of Pell Grants for prisoners back into all this, you've said that Nevada needs the additional federal funding to expand the already successful prison education programs at the community colleges. Tell us about the importance of that.
It's an issue of access. Currently, we have a very small percentage of those that are eligible. I believe the data is like half of the inmates would be eligible for Pell opportunities if they were available. At this point, we're dealing with a handful, so maybe 50 to 100 per year, when we could be looking at thousands. So it's an issue of access and scope.
I like this statement I got from your office before we met today. Your public relations gentleman said, as the program moves forward, Nevada will be able to educate hundreds of inmates and potentially change their post-incarceration outcomes to becoming safe and productive members of the society.
Absolutely. That 43% recidivism number is very telling that that's exactly what happens.
It's beautiful. And when we return, my guest's thoughts on what Congress should further do to help ensure prisoners get the education they need to succeed upon re-entering society. Let's ask him about that right after this.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
Unsafe sleep conditions cause serious injury and even death to infants. Never sleep with your baby on a sofa, in a chair, or in an adult bed. Protect the baby you love from becoming a tragic statistic. The only safe place for your baby to sleep is alone, on its back, in a crib, and in your room. For more information, visit cribsforkids.org. That's cribsforkids.org.
Even when you prepare, life doesn't always go as planned. Today, 1 in 7 seniors live in poverty. To learn how you can help, visit aarpfoundation.org.
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together.
Just text me after.
Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And we are back with our closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. It's our show on Pell Grants for prisoners, and we've been visiting with Dr. Frederica Zaragoza, the president of the Community College Southern Nevada. Dr. Zaragoza, what would it mean if Pell Grants were not re-extended to Nevada's and this nation's inmates?
That would be a lost opportunity. There's approximately 1.5 million inmates that could benefit from this program. Half of those would be Pell eligible, and 95% of those are going to be coming into our communities. So creating those pathways is an essential investment that we need to make. And we've already discussed all the benefits. It's not just the individual benefits, it's benefits to the economy, benefits to the society. And when you're looking at it in terms of return on investment, it's like a 5-in-1. For every dollar you invest, you get 5 in return. That's not a bad investment nowadays.
That's pretty better than the stock market. What else can Congress do, in your opinion, to improve education behind bars and thereby help those inmates have both the best chance for employment success and for staying focused and on the straight and narrow after release?
Most of the literature that speaks to success rates talks about wraparound services and the need for inmates to get the support services that they need. For those that may need remediation, for those that need academic support, I think that there are ways that we can improve those type of services. And then access to technology. I think that that's been a barrier. Rand identified it, and certainly it's very real for us. So we need to continue to work with the correction system to bring it up to the current standards. It's a new era, it's a new delivery system, and I think there's new opportunities in all of this.
As we wrap up today's show, during your trip here to Washington this week, as you meet with Nevada's delegation, what's going to be your main message regarding wanting their support on this program?
I truly believe this would be a lost opportunity for Nevada if we didn't get the legislation. I think it would be a lost opportunity for way too many inmates, and again, for the economy.
Thanks for being here today. Hope to see you again. That does wrap up today's Eye on Washington. For more federal news Nevadans care about, you can go to our website, joycecommunications.com. And while you're there, like us on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. Catch up with any shows you may have missed on our YouTube page. Thanks for joining us on Eye on Washington. I'm Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce airs statewide in Nevada solely due to the generosity of our sponsors. Can your company help us continue our mission to remain Nevada's top source of federal news? If you can help us help Nevadans, please visit joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors and join us today. That's joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors.